The haunted house I grew up in is so up, they could have made an entire horror series based off of that place, okay? So this is my page where I talk about that, but I also tell your guys' stories. And today I got a new submission and it sent chills down my spine. Trigger warning, if you do not like scary shit, you're just gonna want to scroll, okay? But let's get into it. The subject reads, I grew up in a house I later found out wasn't empty. They go on to say, hi, Casey. I'm hoping that I can remain anonymous, but it's okay if you share my story on your page. I've been watching your page for a while, and I've never told this story publicly because it sounds unreal, but I swear on everything this actually happened. I grew up in a house in Ohio. It was just a normal rental, nothing special. My parents got it cheap because it had been sitting for a while, but we didn't really think anything of that. I lived there from the time I was 5 until I moved out at age 18. And for most of my childhood, I just thought the house was weird. Not necessarily haunted, just weird. There were little things that didn't make sense. We weren't allowed to use the basement. My parents always said that it flooded, but I never once saw water down there. The door stayed locked all of the time. That's a little suspicious. At night, I'd hear noises from down there. Not loud, just movement, like something shifting around. I used to think it was pipes or the house settling since it was older, until I got older. When I was about 12, I started noticing things moving. Not in a dramatic way, just small stuff. My backpack wouldn't be where I left it. Kitchen drawers would be open in the morning. The TV would turn on by itself to static, which sounds typical, I know. My parents blamed it on us kids, but one night, something happened that they couldn't explain either. We were all in the living room watching a movie when we heard a loud bang from the basement door. Not like something fell, like something hit it hard. We all froze. My dad got up, walked over, and just stood there staring at the door. And then it happened again. Another bang from inside. He didn't open it. He slowly backed away and told us to go upstairs. That was the first time I actually saw him scared. After that, things seemed to get, well, worse. The sounds in the basement became more frequent, footsteps at night, slow, heavy. Sometimes it sounded like something was dragging across the floor, and sometimes it sounded like more than one set. I started sleeping with my door locked for peace of mind, but the worst part wasn't the noises, it was the feeling. There were certain spots in the house where it felt like you were being watched so intensely you couldn't breathe. The hallway outside my room was the worst. I would literally sprint through it at night because I couldn't shake the feeling that if I slowed down, something would be right behind me. When I was 16, I finally asked my mom why the house had been empty for so long before we moved in. She got really quiet, and then she told me something that I wish I had never known. Before we moved in, a family lived there. There had been some kind of incident. She didn't go into detail at first, but I pushed. Eventually, she told me the entire family was found unalived inside the house. Not all in one place, different rooms. It was like they tried to get away from something. There was no clear explanation, no break-in, and no sign of anyone else being there. And after that, well, no one wanted to live in the house until us. I asked her why she never told us. She said she didn't want us to be scared. But here's what I can't stop thinking about. Those noises in the basement. We were never supposed to go down there, ever. A few months before we moved out, I did anyway. My parents weren't home, so I found the key. I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't this. The basement was completely empty. No furniture, no storage, nada, nothing. The concrete floor covered in deep scratches. Long, uneven marks, like something had been dragged over and over and over. And in one corner, there were these weird 2 dents in the door from the inside, almost like something had been trying to get out. I locked it back up and I never told my parents I went down there. We ended up moving out a few months later, and I thought that would be the end of it. But it wasn't, because now, every once in a while, late at night, I wake up to a sound I haven't heard in years. A slow, heavy, dragging noise right outside my bedroom door. And I start to think that whatever was in that house might not have stayed there. And after watching your videos, it seems like you have similar instances and situations where it seems that paranormal activity follows you where you go. I'm starting to wonder if that's the same with me. Anyways, thank you for taking the time to listen to my story and possibly share it on your page. It's really nice to know other people have had similar experiences. It makes me feel a lot less crazy. Damn, girl. Damn, girl. That got me. When I read this earlier, when I got to the point where the whole family was in there, I was like hair on the back of my neck type vibes. Thank you so much for submitting your story. If you guys want to share your haunted house story with me, you can email me at the email that is posted in my bio. Just go to my bio, send your story over to me, and when I get a chance, I will try to share it on the page.
This girl emailed me and said that her house was so haunted that they had to have a paranormal team come in to investigate, and the paranormal team ended up leaving. We're going to call this girl Casey for the story. So all of Casey's life, she's been able to see and hear things. This is not odd for her, but this experience that she had in this house will be with her forever, she said. When she was younger, her and her family moved into a small town in Texas, and they had just moved into this house. It was about 105 years old when they first moved in, and this was in 2013. So everything was normal for about a week after they moved in, but after a week passed is when things started to ramp up. So they would start losing things, that like they would put an object somewhere and then it would just end up somewhere else out of nowhere, or things would be knocked over when no one was near them. Her family did try to rationalize this and ignore it, but this became extremely difficult to do when things got much worse. One day they're all going out to eat with their grandmother. They go out to eat, they have a good time, they come home, they open the door, they go to walk in the house, and they stop dead in their tracks because right in front of them on the floor, written in red lipstick from the 1940s, is the word leave. I'm assuming that the reason that she knew that this lipstick was from the 1940s is because it was sitting right next to the writing. No one in the family owned this lipstick. This really freaks them out, but there's nothing that they can really do about it, so they choose to ignore it. Well, later on that night, she's getting ready for bed. She goes to bed, she falls asleep, and she wakes up in the middle of the night. She has no idea why she woke up, but she finds herself staring at her closet, and she doesn't really understand why she's staring at her closet, but she gets this inkling that she needs to get up and she needs to go open the closet door. So she gets up out of bed, she walks over to the door, and she slowly opens the door, not really expecting to see anything, just opening the door to have it open, right? As she opens the door, she's looking straight at something. It's this little girl, and she looks kind of misty, and she didn't move and she didn't say anything, but her face looked like a little girl, but it did not have a face of a little girl. She said she had these gray eyes and this huge smile on her face, and she could see all of her teeth, and this smile was just creepy. Out of fear, she looks away for a second, and then she looks back into the closet, and it was just gone. She at this point is like, okay, this is my imagination. There's like shadows in the closet that are playing tricks on me. I am going back to bed. So she goes and she runs back to her bed. She somehow falls asleep. She doesn't know how, but she did. Now, the next part of the story, she does not remember herself, and she doesn't know why she doesn't remember this, but her parents, this is coming from her parents' perspective. A few days later, her mom and her dad are lying in their bed in their room that is next to her room, and they're watching TV. When all of a sudden, they hear this really loud thud, and it's followed by something that sounds like something shattered. Then they suddenly hear their daughter make this whining, like cry noise, and so they run into their daughter's room, and Casey is just sitting in the middle of the floor next to the closet. They look up at the ceiling, and they see that her chandelier is swaying back and forth from her bed to her closet. She said that her ceiling was 10 feet high. So Casey's mom is like, "What happened, Casey?" And Casey just looks up at the chandelier and goes, "I hit it." Her mom is kind of like, "You hit it like with a toy?" And Casey's like, "No, I hit it with my head." And her mom just kind of looks over at her dad, super confused, and then looks back over at Casey and realizes that Casey has a red mark on her head. So somehow, Casey had lifted 10 feet off of the ground and hit her head on the chandelier when she was alone in her room by herself. Things just ended up getting worse from here, right? So her mom one day is walking down the hallway, and she looks up at the vent that's in the hallway, and there is something coming out of the vent that is connected to Casey's closet. Now, she didn't say exactly what this was, but this was the tipping point for them that they were finally like, you know what, we have to get somebody in here to come help us because something is going on here that is not normal. So a couple days later, the paranormal team comes in and they set up all of their stuff, and they set it up in Casey's room because that's where everything is happening. They set up cameras, a video recording, and a voice recording. Casey said that everybody in the room was talking to whatever this thing was, trying to get it to respond in some way. And it's not responding, right, at first. And they keep talking to it. They're kind of antagonizing it when boom, the freaking door on her closet just slams shut. She said that after that, the paranormal team just left. Thanks, guys. Like, you're there to do your job. She said that after the paranormal team left, they ended up staying there for 2 more months where things would get ultimately worse, so bad that they would end up having to move out of the house. She said that one day her dad was in the bathroom and that he had kept the door open while he was going to the bathroom, and her mom was in the room, like it was the bathroom connected to their room, and he got up and all of a sudden the TV just drained of power completely, and then it turned back on, and then all this static just came on the screen. So they're both just staring at this TV like, what the hell's going on, when all of a sudden a pair of her father's steel-toed boots come flying at him and narrowly miss him. She said that the last thing that happened that was really like the icing on the cake was that her dad was getting ready for work one day, and he went to go walk out the front door, and the kitchen was kind of behind where the front door was. And as he's walking out the door, a sharp, shiny object comes flying, barely missed his head, and just slams into the door frame and sticks into the door frame. She said that about a week later that they moved, and that she still actually has things happen, but they're not nearly as bad. So what did you guys think of the story? That's pretty creepy. First of all, I can't believe that the paranormal team just left like that, like a door shutting. That's crazy. I mean, I would understand if any of the other things happened while the paranormal team was there, especially the last thing that happened. Like if they were like, okay, this isn't safe, we have to leave, because that's not safe at that point. But just to leave because a door slams is pretty crazy to me. But what do you guys think was in this house? What do you think that this was? Because whatever this was has a ton of energy, because it was able to literally pick her up 10 feet off of the ground and make her hit her head on that chandelier. So that's crazy. And the energy to like pick objects up like that and throw them, it always makes me wonder, do they miss on purpose, or do you think that they are not allowed to actually like physically harm? Because you always hear these stories of like objects being thrown at people but it missing them and not actually hitting them. So it makes me wonder if at some point there's an intervention, a divine intervention. Then if that was the case, why would there be such a horrible haunting at all? I don't know. It's very confusing to me. Tell me what your thoughts are on this, your thoughts, opinions, suggestions, and drop them in the comments.
The baby eaters story time. In the last part, I told y'all about how back when I was pregnant, I started having these really bad nightmares about this demonic creature that would perch up on the house and try to steal my unborn baby. So here's what happened after that. Like I said, we all stayed in this big trailer park, and then one day this new younger couple moves in to the left of me that we'll call Jose and Casey. Now Casey was very friendly and would talk to us, but Jose wouldn't. He would give us dirty looks and keep driving, but I didn't blame him because we're strangers. Months later, me and Miss May and my husband are standing out the yard talking when Casey walks over and she looks distraught. She asked me if we can sit down and talk alone, and I said sure. She said, I think I'm losing my mind. I said, why? She said, I'm 6 months pregnant and I started having nightmares about these scary looking things trying to take my baby. I literally said, oh hell, here we go again. So I called Miss May over. She keeps hearing someone knock at the doors and windows, scratching on her roof, and something growling and scratching underneath her bed. She also said that she was just standing beside her bed folding clothes when she felt something reach out from underneath the bed and grab her leg and squeeze really tight, and that was why she ran outside to us. And when she pulled up her pants leg, there was a big red mark right where she said it grabbed her. Miss May said, you need to cleanse that house. I'm gonna give you some stuff to ward it off, and do not throw it away. Miss May goes home and then comes back with a big basket full of stuff and shows her how to use it. So she put those coins and gemstones on Casey's doorsteps, and just like she did for me, Miss May makes up these little bags full of herbs from her own garden, and she puts them under Casey's pillow and around the house to help stop the nightmares. And she rubbed some kind of oil all over Casey's belly real deep and made it very clear, do not throw this stuff away. You're gonna need it until you have the baby. For the next few days, Casey comes out feeling great, said she hadn't heard no noises, she wasn't scared, and she hadn't felt this good in months. So I'm outside working in my flower bed when her husband comes home, and he walks up the doorsteps and says, what is this shit? And starts kicking the coins off the doorsteps. And he's raising hell with Casey about it. And I thought, why does that bother him so much? It's not like the coins are all over the doorsteps. They're in a pretty little bowl. So a few days later, I'm outside and Casey asked me, hey, will you come over for a few minutes? And she was acting kind of weird. And I said, are you okay? She said, I just haven't been getting much sleep. Like, it just won't stop. I don't know if it's in my head or if it's really happening. I can't tell anymore. I said, you need to go to Miss May and tell her. She said, no, I don't want to involve her in it. My husband does not like her and he made me get rid of all that stuff. I said, you threw away Miss May's stuff. She made that to help you. That's probably why this thing's messing with you now. I said, if you talk to a doctor about depression, she said, no, my husband would never allow it and he won't let me tell a doctor what's going on. I said, well, you need to go talk to someone. Either way, whether it's medical or spiritual, you need help. And she said, no, my husband will freak out. I said, well, what's more important, pleasing your husband or protecting your baby? She said, I know, I got to do something. Is Miss May home? I said, yeah. When she tells Miss May her husband threw away her stuff, Miss May said, look, something's up with your husband. I don't know what, and the way he's reacting to this stuff, it scares me. Just be careful. Casey said that evening, Jose came in extremely angry, found all the bags and threw them away, and she don't know how he knew where they were. Casey's husband goes over to Miss May's house and he starts a war. He tells Miss May, don't you come back over, don't talk to my wife, leave her alone, you're crazy. Miss May said, I was only trying to help her. She came to me. He said, well, I don't care, don't go back to my house, don't have nothing to do with my family, you stay away from us. And Miss May said, fine, you ain't got to tell me twice, fuck off. And of course I was going to have Miss May's back always. I don't care what was going on, I love her. So that kind of put a strain on mine and Casey's relationship because she couldn't be around Miss May, therefore she couldn't really be around me. But we do keep trying to check on her. After her husband leaves to go to work, we'd go over there and knock on the door and make sure she was okay, and sometimes she'd open the door, sometimes she wouldn't. When she was around 7 months pregnant, she's sitting down on the doorsteps just bawling her eyes out crying. Her old man gets in the truck and leaves, and I walk over and ask her if she's okay, and she said no. And then she pulls out these ultrasound pictures, and they were all crumpled up. I'm peeling these papers apart. I said, why did you ball up your ultrasound pictures? She said, I didn't. My husband did. We just had a big fight because I showed him the ultrasound picture and told him there's something wrong with the baby. That ain't right. And he said, I need to stop making stuff up. He said it was a camera glare, and then he balled the pictures up and left. And I was trying to calm her down. I said, well, maybe the computer threw a weird image. You know, sometimes stuff like that does happen, even with ultrasounds. But once I unwatered the pictures and looked at it, I immediately knew something was wrong here. You know how sometimes the baby will face the camera while they're doing an ultrasound, so you're looking directly at the baby? That's what this one did, but behind the baby's face was a whole other face, also looking at the camera, and it didn't look right. The doctor did a double take and rechecked and made sure there was no twins, no triplets. It was only one baby in there. The second face behind the actual baby's face looked like something out of a horror movie. It scared the hell out of me. This thing was peeking up at the camera with these wonky shaped eyes and mouth, like two heads put in one with a third lump here. It was so weird looking. She said, I told him, I dream about this demon every night. It's after our baby. It's gonna take him. I said, well, if you truly believe that, let's go get some help. Let's talk to Miss May. Let's talk to a doctor. She said, no. I said, please. She said, no. If Jose finds out she was over here or I even talked to her, he will flip the hell out. No, we cannot involve her in this. I said, look, that woman saved my baby's life. I'm telling you, if this is some type of evil spirit or demon, she'll know what to do. Let's go get her. I called over Miss May and said, you need to come see this. Like, I don't know what is in this picture or what's going on, but you need to see it. And when Miss May looked at them ultrasound pictures, she put her hands on Casey's belly and said, that's not good. Casey said, what? She said, it's in there. You need to get rid of it. Casey said, I'm not getting rid of my baby. Miss May said, no, not your baby. The thing that's in there with it. You've got something inside your belly drawing off your baby, and it's going to unalive it if you don't get rid of it. And then a car went by at the end of the road, and I think she thought it was her husband coming home, so she got scared and said, no, I'm just being crazy. Y'all forget it. And then she went home. That evening, we're barbecuing outside when Jose comes out and starts a fight with me and Miss May. He calls Miss May crazy, and then we all get into it. I said, don't you call Miss May crazy. That woman saved me and my baby's life. You can think what you want, and you don't have to listen to her, but you're not going to stand here and disrespect her either, not in front of me. So around 8.5 months pregnant, ambulances come up there and got her 4 or 5 times. She's been rushed to the hospital for bleeding. The doctors did a lot of testing. They even sent her to Chapel Hill. She did overnight stays. They tried everything, and they could not figure out what was stressing the baby out. And because they can't pinpoint what's causing this, they put Casey on bed rest for the remainder of her pregnancy. No schmegs, no arguing, no stress, no house chores, nothing. She has to stay in the bed constantly. Would you believe that Jose still demanded schmegs from her even though she was on bed rest and put their baby at risk and would get mad and start big fights if she didn't do it? He caused his mom to come stay with her. Now, his mother was a sweetheart. She was a Latino woman, very sweet and kind, always cooking, and she took great care of Casey. She would come over and talk to us. You could tell that she loved Casey and that baby to pieces. You could also tell she was terrified of her own son, Jose. She said she thought there was some type of evil being or demon destroying her family. After moving in, she got a feeling that there was a bad presence there, and she would see shadows move throughout the house and hear scratching on the roof and under the bed. One day she was praying over Casey and the baby when Jose walked in, and he grabbed her and physically removed her from the room and threw her back in the spare bedroom, like aggressively. She didn't want to be kicked out of her grandchild's life, so she backed down. He wouldn't even let her bring her little like Christian charms like crosses or Mother Mary necklaces, none of that in the house. When Casey turns 9 months pregnant, about 3 o'clock in the morning, we hear an ambulance go rushing out from their house, and they're taking Casey to the hospital. 4 days later, they come home empty-handed. They had lost their little baby boy, and all I could think about was what Miss May said about this thing being inside her belly with her baby, draining it dry. I don't know if it was something medical or something pure evil, but either way, I always wondered, why was he so dead set against praying over this baby or trying to do anything spiritually for the baby?
What would you do if you got a Doordash order to a house that looked completely abandoned, but when you were standing on the porch, the delivery instructions updated to bring it inside? This is Scared with Jess, and today's story is about someone who says that they were door dashing late at night and they saw something that they just can't explain. This happened last fall. I used to do DoorDash at night after my regular job. It was easy money and I didn't mind it most of the time. It was a little after 11 and I was trying to do one more order before heading home. I picked up the order from a small fast food place and started driving to the address. The farther out I went, the fewer lights there were. Houses got farther apart and there were hardly any cars. When I pulled up, the house looked empty. There was no lights on, there wasn't a car anywhere that I could see, and the grass was definitely overgrown and the walkway had weeds coming up through the cracks. The whole house looked completely like nobody had lived there for a while. I thought the app had to have been wrong, so I checked the number on the mailbox and then the number by the door. It matched. I sat in my car for a few seconds because I really did not want to get out, but the app still said I was at the right place, so I grabbed the bag and went up to the porch. The front door was almost shut, but not fully. It was just cracked. I checked the delivery instructions again, and it still said, leave at door. So I bent down to set the food beside the mat and my phone buzzed. The instructions changed. It now said, "Bring it inside." I just stared at the screen and then I looked up at the front door and it was open a little wider than before now. There was no wind, nothing outside was moving. Then I looked up and the front door was open a little wider than before. There was no wind, there was nothing outside moving. I said, "Hello?" Nothing answered. Then I got another message through the app. "You can come in." I started backing down the porch steps, and that's when I heard movement inside the house. I heard what sounded like bare feet running across old woods somewhere just inside, quick and light at first and then heavier, like whatever it was had started further back in the house and was suddenly coming straight towards the front door. I froze for half a second, and honestly, I should have run then, but I took the delivery photo first because I wanted proof I had actually made it there. I needed that job and I didn't want support acting like I was making stuff up. So I set the bag down, took the picture, and right after that, I heard a voice from inside the house say very quietly, "That's not inside." I grabbed the bag and ran back to my car. I locked the doors and sat there shaking with the food still in my lap. I was trying to decide whether to cancel the order or call support or just leave. Then the app updated by itself. It said, "Hand it directly to customer." I had not handed it to anybody. While I was staring at that, I looked back at the house, and the front door was opening wider, slowly, not swinging open, just easing wider, like someone on the other side was pulling it without wanting the hinges to make any noise. I could see further into the house now, but not much. It was dark, and then something moved in the doorway. At first, my brain tried to make it into a person. That only lasted about a second, though, because it was too tall for the space and bent in a way that made it look like it had unfolded out of the dark instead of just stepped forward. One shoulder sat higher than the other, one arm hung lower than it should have, almost down to where the hand should have been brushing its knee. In the face, I could only see the top half at first, because the lower part was still buried in the dark behind the door frame. But what I could see made me feel sick immediately. The eyes were wide, too wide, glassy in a way that caught what little light there was without reflecting it back right. They didn't look dark, they looked pale and flat, like dead eyes in a photograph when the flash hits wrong. Too round, too small, no blink, no shift, just fixed on me. Then it leaned forward a little more, enough for me to see the mouth. It wasn't smiling, it just looked stretched open, already waiting like it had been standing there with its jaw hanging loose the whole time. That's when I started the car and left. I didn't call support until I was back on the main road, and the woman I got sounded half asleep and not interested. She asked if I felt unsafe, and I said yes. Then she put me on hold. And while I was on hold, the customer left a message on the order. It said, "Next time, don't stop at the door." I almost dropped my phone. Next morning, I looked at the delivery photo again because I wanted to convince myself I had just panicked and made it worse in my head. The bag was on the porch where I had put it, but in the dark gap of the doorway, there was something standing there. You couldn't make out the whole face, just enough shape to know it had been watching me the entire time. 2 days later, I drove back in daylight because I wanted to prove to myself it was just some creepy occupied house with some jerk inside. The house looked worse in the daytime, though. One side window was boarded up and the mail was jammed in the slot. The yard was a complete mess. There was trash everywhere. There was a shut-off notice taped to the front door from the power company. I parked across the street and zoomed in with my phone. The shut-off date was from 3 months before. No power for 3 months. I was still staring at it when my phone buzzed. It was Doordash again, a new order for the same address. I declined it so fast I almost threw my phone. I never did Doordash after dark again. Anyway, good luck sleeping tonight.
Second story to the creepy things that have been happening to me lately. My first story was the one about the recorded lecture and that demonic ass voice coming through, right? Okay, so I was on the phone with my niece and I had my toddler with me. So we're talking on the phone, and I heard a little boy in the background, right? And so then my daughter comes up to the phone, and she's like, Nina, who's that? And my niece is like, who, right? And she's like, is that Emmy? Because she thinks it's her boyfriend's cousin, because it sounds like a little boy. And she's like, no, dude. And she like grabs the phone and she's like showing us like, I'm at home, nobody's here. I was like, okay, that was a little creepy. So then my niece starts telling me how when my daughter's been over there, because she takes care of her, she hasn't been wanting to go to the bathroom. Like, she's scared of it, and she's been telling her like, close the door, like there's a man in there. And the fact that like all this has been like happening recently, like one thing after another, it's been kind of giving me the creeps.
Good evening. I'm back again. These are the top 5 places in the world that I think have the most paranormal energy. Let's begin. Things have been kind of crazy. I'm sorry I take so many breaks, but sometimes if you don't get paid on TikTok here in Canada, then you gotta focus on things that actually are paying you in real life in Canada. There's no creator fund in Canada, so I've been kind of busy in the real world. Not on TikTok world, and I was getting paid for work. Anyways, I was working for a big video game company. The project's over now. I'm done with that. Now I'm here, focused on you, my beloved. The people who stayed and waited for my return. Let's begin. Okay, Japan is for sure on this list because it has the scariest and craziest lore and urban legends of these creatures and things and people that haunt and do things. Number 2 is it the Philippines? They have that thing that like is wrapped up like a dead body and like jumps and comes towards you. I don't even want to say it. I think it's something, but I don't. Anyways, but yeah, Philippines, or like you can say like Cambodia as well, but like I'm gonna say Philippines. Malaysia, Philippines, and Cambodia, I would throw them all in because they have similar urban legends and lore in a lot of ways. But Japan and those, and then there's also the Middle East, which is really the things that I've seen online of like videos of like these, dare I say, jinns that are there and haunting places, and the things that they can do, and the stories that I've heard. So a lot of stuff there in Middle East. And Pakistan, for sure. There's a lot of scary stuff there from the stories that I've heard myself from my family. And also, I don't know how many numbers of countries that's been already, but I'm gonna also throw in Mexico, and also Argentina, because those I've seen, again, the videos I've seen, the stories I've heard, the lore and urban legends that all these countries have, they are so intertwined and similar that makes me believe that these things are definitely real, and they exist in all cultures and religions, and people have seen different variations of them. And for sure there's like, why is there always a woman in white with long dark hair? Why is she always like on a bridge, you know? Or like, why did her kids die and she like, you know, she died or she drowned? Like, the story exists in every country, in every story, every culture. Makes you think, you know? There's stories of like babies crying and like this tall dark figure and things like that. I definitely want to get more into it and actually like go over each one with you guys. Would you guys be interested in that? I want to go more into it. This is just like a comeback video, but definitely gonna be posting more spooky things now. Have some time, and yeah, stay spooky, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Hello and welcome back to the Haunted Teasville. This is my necklace. It's down here if you want. It's cute. Wear it every single day. We need to have a chat, spooky friends. Okay, so I've been getting a few comments here and there because my videos have gained a little bit more traction recently, like this. And I need y'all to understand something. I don't give a single flying fuck if you don't want to listen to me tell stories. I don't. There are plenty of other people who do. Okay? My problem is whenever people get on my page that I have had for years now, and I have been telling stories in my way for years, and y'all think that you can get on my page and tell me what I should not do, or say that you're going elsewhere because you don't like the way that I tell the stories. I don't care. I also am not naive to the fact that I am not everyone's tall glass of Long Island iced tea, okay? I've got a little spice in there, and I know that. I've got a little extra something in there, and not everybody likes that, and that's okay. But I'm not going to change up the way that I do my shit because you don't like it. Because the majority of the people do like it that are on my page and are watching my videos and have been watching my videos for a very, very long time. So with that being said, if you don't like my shit, scroll. That's literally all you have to do. It's not hard. Tutorial. Look at that. You get free tutorials on my page. You are grown folks on the internet. I know that there are some young kids on here or whatever. 90% of y'all that comment on my stuff are grown ass adults who know how to use their Twitter fingers. And I know that you know how to use them because you type out these long messages that don't make a fuck to anybody instead of just swiping. You waste both of our times, and that's really unfortunate. So I, again, understand not everybody likes the way that I tell stories. I completely understand that. But I don't care to hear it. Because I do know, and I don't need to see, this is not a suggestion box. I don't have a suggestion box on my page. I don't ask for suggestions that often, and when I do, it's not about that. I'm asking for what you want to hear from me in terms of a story. Do you want me to do different types of stories? I'm never going to change the way that I tell them. So you can do all of us a favor and save everybody's time, save your own energy, because the train, this hoss of a train, don't stop going. And it drives the same that it always has and will continue to do so, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's how I got to 500,000 followers. That's all I'm saying. Stay spooky, friends. Hello and welcome back to a series of spooky stories, The Haunted Teasville. This series is brought to you by all things spooky and ungodly amounts of paranormal activity. Please watch the next 10 seconds. I got this as a free sample and I completely forgot to finish and post this video. Story is coming. This is how it works. I was struggling doing this in the camera. Don't ever do that. That's stupid. I don't know why I didn't just do it in a fucking mirror. It's down here. Now onto the story. Hi there, feel free to use my actual name, Diane, but I'll just use the letters for the others involved in this story. When I was in high school, one of my best friends, G, along with her big brother and sister-in-law, decided to make their own Ouija board using a piece of paper and a shot glass. You're trying to summon demons with that thing. A piece of paper and a shot glass? You're getting the worst of the worst with that, buddy. At first, nothing happened outside of the shot glass moving, which they all thought someone else was moving, but then the tube TV in the living room turned on, blaring static. The brother turned it off and they went back to messing with their Ouija board. That happens, and you just keep going. It turned on again, and the brother went to unplug it, but it wasn't plugged in, and it shut off on its own. Oh, fuck no. Oh, fuck no. When it turned off, they saw a woman wearing an old black dress and veil and decided they were done. It's too late now. But they didn't say goodbye to close the session. She told me and our other best friend E about it the next day, and we were both really mad. We gave her an earful about how stupid that was, but she thought that we were being dramatic. Your TV wasn't plugged in, and it came on twice, blaring static, and then you saw a woman in a black dress with a veil. But they're being dramatic. That night, E started having nightmares of her dying in various ways, always seeing that woman right before everything went black. I started experiencing things too, starting that night. Oh, no, no, no. You're giving me contact spirits? I think the fuck not. As I had just fallen asleep, I felt a hand wrap around my ankle and pull me down my bed. I tried convincing myself that I had just had a falling dream, but my body had been physically dragged halfway down my bed, something that never happened when I had a falling dream. The next night we experienced the same thing, but I had the added experience of seeing her standing behind me in my reflection. This continued for the next couple of months, always the same thing, but with her getting closer and closer to me every time I saw her in my reflection. It got to the point where I just stopped looking at anything reflective. Eventually, her mother did a cleansing of the house and everything stopped. I haven't seen the woman in years, and E stopped having the nightmares, but I still think about this experience 10 years later. I now have Mother Mary tattooed on me for constant protection and pray regularly. This isn't the only experience that I've had, so if you'd like to hear others, let me know. Why do y'all always say that? You know that we do. You know what they're going to say in the comments. Duh. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. When are we going to learn about these flippin' Ouija boards? Especially homemaking them. A shot glass, bitch. A shot glass? My God. Rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being the least scary, creepy, spooky, 10 being the most. If you have a story of your own that you want to submit, you can do so on the link tree in my profile. I will see you all at the next episode. Stay spooky, friends.
One of my followers might have witnessed his own mom being possessed. Hi, Allie. I have a paranormal story that a lot of people may find hard to believe, so I only tell it to those close to me, and even they look at me like I'm full of it. I was born and raised in San Francisco, California. We lived in an old Victorian-style apartment complex. There were many paranormal things that happened there when I was younger, but the one that traumatized me the most is what my brother and I still call the night to this day. It was the mid-90s. I was about 7 years old. My younger sister and I were watching TV late at night in our room while my mom was in the kitchen finishing up the dishes. My older brother, who was 14 at the time, was eating a bowl of ice cream in the kitchen with her. Eventually, he came into our room. By then, my sister and I had already passed out and the TV station had cut off, so the screen was just white static. My brother left the TV on, tucked us into bed, and laid next to us while waiting for my mom to come to bed. At that point, I had woken up, and I was waiting for her. My mom finally came into the room. She shut off the lights and the TV, leaving only the glow of the streetlights and the moon shining through the window. I was watching her in the dark as she put one knee on the bed to climb in, and suddenly, I saw the neck and chest area of her shirt get pulled back hard, like someone had yanked her. She was ripped off of the bed so forcefully that she landed on her back, almost against the wall. My mom started screaming and yelled, "Something just pulled me off the bed." Immediately, she decided that we were leaving to go to my aunt's house around the corner. As she was putting her shoes on, and my brother was trying to get me and my sister ready to leave, my mom screamed again, this time in pain. She said, "Something scratched me." My brother lifted her shirt, and across her back were 3 fresh red scratch marks. At that point, we ran. We ran out of the apartment late at night. I was in nothing but a shirt, shoes, and underwear. My brother was pulling me by the hand, almost dragging me because I couldn't keep up. And the entire time that we were running, I kept looking back because I felt like something was chasing us, like it was right behind us. When we got to my aunt's house, we were screaming and banging on the door until everyone woke up, but when we got inside, it didn't stop. My aunt was terrified. After we explained everything, she checked my mom's back and saw the scratches, and instead of backing down, she started taunting whatever it was. In Spanish, she yelled, "You coward! This is a family you're messing with. What's wrong? You only have 3 fingers?" And she laughed. Right after that, my mom screamed again in pain. The scratches on her back went from 3 to 5. Everyone started yelling at my aunt to stop. A family friend and his wife came over and brought a pastor from their church with them. For context, we're a Mexican family, and my mom's English isn't very strong. While the priest was praying over her, something changed. My mom started laughing. Then she started spelling words. She went from barely speaking English to spelling out full responses, letter by letter, like clockwork. At one point, she spelled out the name of my brother, who had passed away years before, and said it was him who was there, terrorizing us. My aunt immediately said, "My nephew would never do that," And my mom responded by spelling H-A-H-A. After hours of this, praying, yelling, crying, my mom finally calmed down and passed out. They carried her to my aunt's bed. The priest said that he had put it to sleep. By that point, we had all been awake for hours, terrified. I had cried so much that I ended up wetting myself. The next day, my mom woke up, and she didn't remember anything past the moment that she got scratched. It took us a few days before we were even able to go back to our apartment. We were too scared. To this day, I believe my mom may have been an easy target for whatever that was, because she hasn't always been the best person. But I know what I saw. All of it happened. The year was around 1995, and to this day, that apartment unit is always up for rent. I even went back about 3 years ago, and it was empty.
This is a story that this girl's aunt used to share with the entire family. So when this happened, her aunt was around 18 or 19 years old, and she lived in a really small town in Mexico. So around these small towns, they have like this yearly party, and everybody goes to these parties. But unfortunately, this year, it wasn't going to be in the town that she lived in. It was going to be in a town over. It was also like another remote small town. And usually people who live in these small towns either go walking or go in horse. Nobody really have cars. Because of this, the aunt coordinated with her best friends, and they were all gonna walk together to the party. They all had gotten to the party, they were all having fun, but the aunt was actually a little bit bored and she just wanted to go back home. She did tell her friends that she was gonna leave, but she said it because she was hoping that maybe one of them wanted to leave as well, so that she didn't have to walk back home alone and at night. But unfortunately, they were all having so much fun that they didn't want to leave just yet. She decided that she didn't want to wait there for them, so she was gonna walk back home by herself. So as she's walking home, it is like a dirt road, and next to the dirt roads are like farms that people own there. And she explains that as she's walking, she's starting to hear somebody come out from like the farm area and walking behind her. She obviously turns around, and to her surprise, it was a little boy. He was alone, there was nobody around with him, and he looked to be around 8 or 9 years old. She explains how this little boy greeted her really nice, like there was nothing wrong, nothing weird, other than the fact that there was a fucking little boy alone in the middle of the night walking home. Her aunt says that the little boy asked her, like, what are you doing out here by yourself at night? And that she was more surprised because, yeah, there's times where you would walk home at night by yourself and you would see another adult, but it would be another adult going home late too, not another kid. She did explain to him that she had just left a party and was on her way home, and the little boy asked if he can accompany her just until she gets home safely, and she agreed. So as they're walking, she's obviously like, what the fuck is this boy doing alone? So she does ask him, hey, what are you doing alone walking at night? Like, where are your parents? What are you doing? The little boy tells her that his parents are actually back at the farmland and they had sent him home to get some food. The aunt didn't find anything weird with that. Again, it's a small town, like there's a lot of farmland, so they just kept on walking towards her house. When they finally hit the edge of the town, she decided to just continue walking to where her house was, and she noticed that the little boy was following her as well. She just thought that maybe he was walking her home. She finally makes it to the door of her house. She takes out her key, and when she turns back to see if the little boy had left or he was still there, she doesn't see that little boy anymore. Again, she thought nothing of it. The kid probably went home, so she went into her house and went to sleep. She explains that a few days after, she had to go through that little road that she walked with the little boy, and this time it was daylight. And when she gets to the point where she had heard the boy coming and they decided to walk together, she sees that there is a cross on the side, and it was a cross for a little boy.
In Davenport, Iowa, there was this woman named Janet who lived with her husband and 2 sons. She said one night she was hanging out with her son in the living room when her son looks directly at her and says, "Mommy, why does Grandma call you Bug?" Now, her grandma had passed away long before she ever got to meet her sons. So she was perplexed that her son knew this special nickname that only her grandmother called her. So she thought, that is weird. Like, how would he know that name? Because not even my husband knows about that. Couple weeks later, she's in her bedroom with her husband, and she overhears her son like having this full-on conversation with someone in the bedroom. So she gets up, she walks into his room, and she's like, "Hey, who are you talking to?" And he's like, "Oh, Mommy, I was talking to the farmer." And she goes, the farmer. Like, who is that? And he goes, the farmer. And the mom says, well, where'd he go? And he said, well, he walked out when you came in the room. And she thought, that's kind of creepy. He has this imaginary friend. And so, like, over the next few months, he keeps having these conversations with this imaginary friend that he calls the farmer. But then one night, her and her husband are sitting in bed and they're having a conversation when they hear the son start yelling from his bedroom. And he's like, no, Grandma said I can't be friends with you anymore. Like, leave me alone. Like, my grandma does not want me to be friends with you. And so she gets up, her husband gets up, and they go into his bedroom. And they're like, what is going on? Like, what's all the commotion about? And the son looks at his mom and his dad and is like, the farmer had to go away because Grandma said I cannot play with him. And so she sent him away. And that's when the mom started to realize, like, hey, wait a second. Maybe this is my grandmother protecting my son from whatever this farmer thing was. What do you think is going on with these 11 scientists who have either vanished or passed away in very strange manners? Now, all of these people have very similar connections. A lot of them have worked on secret UFO programs. And not only that, you have people from Los Alamos, from NASA, all the way to the military who have connections with the UFO phenomenon. So we have to ask, what is going on? But there's also one other prominent figure in the UFO world that people are not talking about, and that's Nick Pope. Nick Pope worked for the Ministry of Defense on a secret UFO program. He was the real life X-Files. And when you look at his passing, right, he got sick very fast. And within 6 months, he was gone. Now, a lot of people don't talk about these things, but a lot of people in the UFO community know that if you talk about certain things, really stuff bad happens to you. And they have the ability to make you sick, to make you disappear. But we have to ask ourselves, why would they do this? Part of it could be because of national security, right? You don't want China, Russia, North Korea to know these secrets. If they're working on anti-gravity, these new propulsion systems, you don't want that technology getting into the hand of the enemies. You also don't want people to know if you have this secret underground facility where you're reverse engineering craft or you have extraterrestrial life, right? That could be dangerous. But some people think that it's something much bigger. They do not want to tell us what is coming next. And they want to be one step ahead of us because they know of an extraterrestrial invasion, or perhaps that these extraterrestrials are malevolent. So what do you think? What is going on? Why are these people disappearing? And what is happening to them? You have to understand that when you go into the Appalachian Mountains, you are entering into another realm. And there is a set of unspoken rules that you must follow. Rule number 1, if you hear something calling your name, right, you didn't. There is nothing there. And you should not respond. Do not say hello. Do not say, who is it? Just run away. Because something is trying to gain permission. And by you acknowledging it, you are allowing it to come after you. If you hear screams in the mountains, right, you didn't. And do not go towards the direction of the screams to try and help. Because once again, something is trying to lure you. If you see people, you don't. If you hear crying,
you're not hearing it. Do not respond to this at all because you are giving permission to whatever is in those woods to come after you. Now, if you are to go camping in the Appalachian Mountains, right, you have to remember, at night, you must keep a fire going at all times. And it's not for warmth, it's not for cooking, it's to keep you safe. And if you are going to camp in a tent, make sure when you go into that tent, it is sealed up. There are no holes, there are no cracks. And if you hear any kind of screaming, yelling, or anyone calling your name, do not respond. Do not go to sleep. And if something wakes you up, stay alert, and once again, do not respond. Now, it's very important when you are walking through the Appalachian Mountains, if you come across a deer carcass, do not touch it, do not stare at it, walk away, ignore it, because this is something, once again, trying to lure you into the woods. Now, if it comes to the point that something is chasing you and it gets you, and there is no escape, fight. Fight as hard as you can, whether it's a person, an animal. If it's something else, though, and you know what I'm talking about, well, you just let it get you, right? Because at that point, there's nothing you can do. And there's an old saying, you go into the Appalachian Mountains with 2 bullets, right? You fire the first one at something that isn't a person, that isn't an animal. And if it doesn't run away, you know what to do with the second one.
Have you ever had a weird experience at Buc-ee's? Now, there was this man named Alex. Alex said one summer he got a job at Buc-ee's, and he worked there for about 6 months until one night he had a very creepy experience. So he said he went in for his normal night shift, and he could tell when he got there it was going to be a pretty slow night. So after about 15-20 minutes after the start of his shift, he found himself behind the counter checking in inventory. So that's when he noticed this guy walk in. He had this button-up shirt with this big beaded necklace, these blue jeans, and this long black hair. And he said something about this guy seemed off, and he got the feeling like he might try and do something. So he kept a close eye on him. He said this guy just walked over into the corner of the store, and he turned and he started to stare at Alex. And Alex, after 5 minutes, he looks over, he sees this guy still staring at him. 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So for 20 minutes, this guy just sat there staring at him. And then he turned and just walked out of the store. A little bit later after this, he goes and he takes his break. And he said he got a phone call from his friend that he hadn't heard from in years. He said this friend was Native American. He was very spiritual. And so he picks up the phone call. And his friend's like, hey, Alex, this is going to sound really weird, but I had sort of this premonition, this vision. And I feel like I'm supposed to tell you, run away. Just remember that, run away. And Alex is like, okay, I have to get back to work. So he hangs up and he goes back to work. After a couple hours, he finds himself by the front window sweeping. And this big storm had came on. And as he's looking out the window, he sees a flash of lightning. And as it illuminates the parking lot, he sees this wolf, dog-like animal, running right in front of the store. It looked like it had mange. It had this thick brown fur, and it looked in pretty bad shape. And he said the lightning flashed again, and he looked back out there, and it was gone. So his boss comes up to him and says, hey, I need you to go and take out all the garbage. So he takes all the bags of garbage, and he throws it in this container, and he starts going out of the store. As he gets to the side of the store, he begins to hear shuffling sounds. And so he grabs his flashlight, and as he turns around to the backside of the store, right there's the dumpster, he sees something digging out of the garbage. And as he gets a closer look and he shines a light on this thing, said it was a man with no shirt, no pants, but his face looked like a dog. And he said that's when this thing turned and it said, Alex, Alex. And instantly his jaw dropped. He turned and he remembered what his friend had told him, and he just ran away. And he ran all the way to his car, jumped in, and he left, and he quit that night. He said a couple days later, he heard in the news that someone at that Buc-ee's disappeared. And he always felt like his friend was giving him a warning because that could have been him.
In March of 2015, 68-year-old Tamara Samsonova was having renovations done to her home in St. Petersburg, Russia. A friend of hers, 79-year-old Valentina Ulanova, had heard about Tamara's renovations, and she approached her and said, "Do you want to stay with me while that's getting done?" Tamara was very thankful, immediately said yes, and as soon as she moved in, she immediately started picking up the slack by cleaning up the house and doing the dishes, and made sure she always cooked food for her friend because she wasn't able to pay rent. After a couple of weeks, the renovations on Tamara's home were complete, but Tamara didn't want to leave. She was really enjoying living with Valentina, and so she asked Valentina would it be okay if she stayed a little bit longer. Valentina was a little bit reluctant, but did ultimately say, okay, that's fine. A couple of months go by, and Tamara is showing no sign that she plans on leaving Valentina's home anytime soon, and Valentina is getting increasingly frustrated with that reality. Finally, in late July 2015, Valentina confronts Tamara and says, "You gotta go." And Tamara just says, "No, I'm not leaving." This causes a huge fight, but at the end of it, Tamara still doesn't leave. So for a couple of days, the women just do not speak to each other. The silence is finally broken on July 23rd when the women get into a fight about some empty cups in the sink that one of them was supposed to clean, but they didn't, and they fought about whose responsibility it was to do the dishes. And then of course, the whole subject comes up again of Valentina saying, "You shouldn't even be here, you need to leave." And Tamara's like, "No, I'm not gonna leave." And so another big blowout fight happens. But at the end of this fight, Tamara finally concedes and says, "Okay, I get it. I need to leave. Just give me a couple of days and I'll be out of your hair." Immediately, the tension is gone in the room. They're no longer fighting, and Valentina is happy that she's finally going to get her apartment back. And Tamara says, "Look, I'll make us dinner tonight. I'll go out and get some food." Tamara leaves the apartment and goes to a pharmacy and gets a whole bunch of sleeping pills. And then she gets the ingredients to a particular salad that she knows Valentina really likes. She goes back, she starts making dinner. And as she's making this salad, she crushes up the sleeping pills and mixes the powder with the salad dressing and gives that to Valentina. And Valentina, who's very hungry, eats the whole salad and doesn't notice anything is wrong. As soon as Tamara was sure Valentina had eaten the entire salad, Tamara just goes up to her room and goes to bed. A couple hours later, at about 2 in the morning, she goes back down to the kitchen and she sees Valentina is passed out on the ground. Tamara goes up to her and sees that she's still breathing, which was a disappointment because she wanted her to die from taking all these sleeping pills, but it doesn't matter. She takes out her hacksaw that she had borrowed from the neighbor earlier in the day and proceeds to butcher Valentina. And she makes special care as she's cutting her into pieces to remove her lungs and not damage them, because Tamara had a taste for human lungs. It was actually her favorite food. She took Valentina's head and she put it into a big pot of water and began boiling that to eat it. The rest of her was cut up into as small of pieces as she could get them and then wrapped in a shower curtain and placed in various bags. As Valentina's head and lungs are being cooked on the stovetop, Tamara begins making dozens of trips from the apartment, down the stairs, out the front door, all the way down to the lake that was near their property, where she would dispose of the body parts before coming back and getting more. Valentina's hips and legs were apparently too heavy to haul all the way down to the lake, so she took them to a nearby forest. Tamara's final trip sees her carrying a big silver pot, inside of which is Valentina's head, or at least whatever is left of it after Tamara was done eating most of it. 4 days later, on July 27th, a young couple that was living in the same apartment complex as Tamara and Valentina were out for a walk with their dog out near that lake. And as they're walking, their dog takes off running and stops in front of this huge bag that it's sniffing and pawing and trying to open. And the owners of the dog try to call it back, but they can't get it to get away from this bag. And so the owners walk over and they kind of poke the bag. They can see it's pretty heavy, and they open it up and they find a human torso, and it's Valentina's. When the police show up, the first thing they do is they go to Valentina's apartment, and they're surprised to find Tamara living there. They're kind of sensitive with her, and they say, "Your friend, your relative, was just found deceased and we need to look around the apartment." Tamara was completely indifferent. She did not care. They had just discovered her body and she didn't care that they were searching the apartment. It was like she knew someday this was going to happen. During the search, the police officers quickly find blood all over the bathroom and in the kitchen. They even find the hacksaw she used that's got blood on it, and they find Tamara's diary that's sitting next to this book about black magic. And the police are horrified when they see that the diary contains meticulous notes that Tamara had kept of all of the ritualistic killings she had perpetrated over the past 20 years, and there was 14 of them. And almost all of them were motivated by Tamara's desire to cast spells that she apparently was reading about in these black magic books she had. And virtually all of these spells required human flesh or other human components. And so she would kill these people, she would use their bodies to cast these spells, and then afterwards she would consume them. Not because that had anything to do with the spell, but because she liked the way people tasted, in particular, human lungs. The police arrest Tamara, who doesn't put up a fight. She says, yep, you got the right person. I did all this. While Tamara was on trial, she seemed like she was in a great mood. She told the judge, I hope you give me a really severe punishment. I expect to die in prison. She was seen blowing kisses to reporters. It was like she was just totally out of touch. Or maybe she literally knew this was going to happen and just didn't care anymore. Tamara, who would be nicknamed the Granny Ripper by newspapers over the course of this trial, was given a life sentence, and to this day, she is still sitting in jail. Here is the surveillance footage of Tamara disposing of Valentina's body, as well as some shots of Tamara during her trial. After spending 21 years in the U.S. Army, a man retires and moves to Central Florida with his wife and young son. Although his family had plenty of money because he had a pension coming in and his wife still worked full-time, he just got bored really quickly after moving to Central Florida and decided he would just take a job doing something just to stay occupied. And so he ended up taking a job at a highway gas station. One of the primary reasons he chose this particular job is because the owners of the gas station didn't care if his son came along to help him stock shelves and hang out behind the cash register. And so for years, that's just how it went. The man would work at the gas station and his son would tag along. Even after his son became a teenager and you'd think might be wanting to do other things, well, the town was so small, there was almost nothing to do. So his son still came along well into his teenage years. One night in 1990, his son, who was 15 years old at the time, was at the station and he was actually taking a break sitting outside on a picnic table. He was reading a magazine, drinking a Mountain Dew, and it's dark out, and he notices out of the corner of his eye that there is a woman walking off of the highway towards the gas station. It was a very quiet night at the time, so there's no cars getting gas, there's nobody there, and there's not really anybody even driving on the highway, and so that's why she really stood out to him. And he turns and he notices her and he thinks to himself, no one ever walks to our gas station. We're on a highway. Everybody drives here. So she must have broken down and she must be coming here to try to use our phone to call a tow truck or something like that. So the woman is walking across the lot, coming closer and closer to the gas station, and the boy at this point has turned his attention back to his magazine, but he would say later that he kept looking up and keeping an eye on her because there was something off about her. The woman ultimately walks right behind him and goes in the door into the gas station. Doesn't acknowledge the boy, doesn't say hi to him, just walks straight inside, and she starts walking up and down the aisles of the gas station. Now, from where the boy was sitting, it's all glass, so he could clearly look in and see his father behind the counter, and he could see the head of this woman as she walked in and around all these aisles. And as soon as the woman was in the store, kind of pacing around the aisles, the boy put his magazine down and was just watching. And he noticed that she was not really shopping. She was just looking down for a few seconds, wouldn't pick anything up, so she wasn't buying anything. And she would look up at the counter where his father was, and she would just stare at him, and then she'd look back down at what she was doing, and she would go through all the aisles. And at some point, the woman just kind of abandons this phony, I'm pretending to shop routine, and just walks up to the counter. Now, nobody else is in the store, there's nobody else coming in, and so the boy could actually fairly clearly hear what she was saying to his father. And she told his father that she had broken down and she needed a ride, and could he drive her to Ocala, which was the next big town north of this gas station. And the boy would say that his father acted very strangely because his father is normally incredibly pleasant with all the customers. He's very chatty even. Like, he talks to everybody who comes in the store. But as soon as this woman had gone in, his dad had seemed kind of dismissive and almost rude to this woman. And when she was talking to him, asking for a ride, he just said, no, I won't give you a ride. The woman is annoyed by how quickly she's been shot down. But instead of just taking no for an answer, she turns and looks at the boy who's sitting out on the bench, who's looking right at her, and she points at the boy and she says, what about him? Is he your son? Can he give me a ride? The boy notices that his father, 'His father, who's not within her eyesight, is looking at his son going, no. Like, whatever she wants from you, you're gonna say no to it. And the boy's a little bit confused by this because he's still trying to understand why his dad was so against helping this woman, because she clearly needs our help or someone's help. But he just took his dad at face value, and when the woman's pointing at him, he knew, the boy, that if she came over and asked him, he would say no. But it wouldn't come to that, because the boy's father would say to the woman, no, my son's not going to give you a ride. You need to leave here immediately. Do not come back. Leave. We're not going to help you. She's furious. She's cussing him out. She storms out and slams the door. She starts cussing at the boy, and she walks off. The whole time she's turning around and flipping them off and screaming profanities at them, but she ultimately walks off, and the dad kind of followed her out and is standing next to his son as she walks off. And the boy asks his dad, like, what was her deal? Why did that happen? Why did you not want to help her? And the dad just said, I don't know. There was something off about her, and I don't know how to place it, but I did not want her around you. I knew I didn't want to give her a ride. I knew she had to go. A year later, the boy is in his room when he hears his dad in the other room yelling for him to come in here and look at the TV. So he runs into the TV room, and on the TV is the same woman from the gas station, better known as Eileen Wuornos. She was a serial killer who used to pick up her male victims at gas stations in Florida. It's unclear whether the boy or the boy's father were her next victims. But by the time she had shown up at that gas station, she had already killed 4 people. And following that interaction with them at the gas station, she had gone on to kill 3 more people, including someone in Ocala, Florida, which was the town she had asked them to give her a ride to. Eileen had been caught, that's why she was on TV, and she was later sentenced to death.
Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
My neighbor texted me to stop coming over, but I've never been inside her apartment. I live in a small apartment complex. It's nothing fancy. People usually keep to themselves. There's a woman across the hall, and we don't really talk except for the usual, like, oh, hi, when we pass each other. One night around 11:30 p.m., I got a text from an unknown number, and it said, can you not come by this late anymore? I thought it was just a wrong number, so I ignored it. A minute later, I got another text, and it said, I know it's you. You don't have to knock. And that made me pause for a minute, and then I just responded back. I said, I think you have the wrong number. She responded almost instantly, and she said, apartment 204, you are right across from me. I've seen you and my people before. And that made me freeze because, yeah, I do live in 204, but I told her, I said, I haven't been outside of my apartment all night. She just replied with an okay, and that was that, and I got a little creeped, so I went and I looked outside, and there was nobody there, and my door was locked, and the deadbolt was locked. Anyways, I brushed it off until the next night, and that came around, and then I got another text from her, and it said, you tried the handle. I got up immediately, and I checked my door. It was still locked. I opened it up, I checked the hallway. It was completely empty. I even went and I checked the stairwell, and there was nobody there, and I didn't hear any feet going down the stairs. So I went back into my apartment, and I just said, I haven't left my apartment again. I didn't get any response back, but the next day, I ran into her in the hallway. And she looked a little tired, and I just asked her, is everything okay? Like, are you all right? She just kind of hesitated, and she looked at me, and she said, can you just not come by anymore at night? And I told her, it's not me that's coming by, and she just kind of nodded like she didn't believe me and went to her apartment. That night, I stayed up late on purpose. It was around 12:40 at night, and that's when I heard it. I heard a soft knock, not at my door, but across the hall. I sat there and listened for a minute, and then I heard her voice come through, and it said, I said stop, and it was a very nervous but very stern tone. This time I stood up and I went and I looked at my peephole, and this time I swear I saw somebody standing there, and they weren't at her door. They were in front of mine, but they were facing her door. So I opened the door to address the person that I saw, and when I opened it, it was empty, and then I got a text on my phone, and it said, why are you just standing there by your door? Closed my door. I didn't respond to her, and then a couple minutes later I heard her open up her door, and then it closed again. And then the next day when I went out to go to work, I saw a little paper on her door. It was a notice that she had moved out literally overnight, no goodbye, no warning, nothing at all. She was just gone, and I haven't gotten any text since, but sometimes I swear in my life I still hear the knock at the door on her side of the door. I don't know who it is, and I don't know where it's coming from, and I don't know what happened to her or why she moved out so late overnight. but
I have some more creepy pictures to show you, and these I found on Reddit. This picture was taken at my grandma's house one day. There was nobody else there that day except for my grandma, my aunt, and my little cousin. This was taken on Whidbey Island, Washington. I guess the area was once a major burial place for local native tribes. In the picture, we can see an unknown woman in the background. My friend has recently shown me this picture from 2016 of him and his brother at the front of Blackpool Beach at 7 a.m. The photo was taken by their mother, and when they looked back at the photo, they saw the figure in between their legs, looked around, and nobody was there.
It looked exactly like my dad, but whatever was standing in my house that night wasn't. Get ready with me while I tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. I used to think I knew exactly how my dad sounded, how he stood, the way he looked at me, and I know how that sounds. I've tried to explain it 100 different ways, but nothing makes sense. This all happened about 1.5 years ago. My mom was out of town and my dad had gone out with friends. He told me he was going to stay the night at my cousin's house because it was late and he didn't want to bother me to come pick him up. So it was just me, home alone. That night the house was completely quiet. Quieter than usual and quieter than I was comfortable with. The sort of quiet that you notice because it's unusual. I had gone to bed and at some point I woke up. I remember checking my phone and it was around 2 a.m. I was thirsty, so I got out of bed and went downstairs to the kitchen. Finally got there and I grabbed a glass of water and stood there for a second, half asleep. And then I turned around. Why is it always sneaking up on you? Why is it always sneaking up? Oh, that's when I saw him. My dad standing in the kitchen, just standing there. There are certain ways that things are described that they give me the creeps, okay? Picturing somebody that you know is not supposed to be home, just, first of all, sneaking up on you, right? Second of all, just standing there, not saying anything, not moving, not trying to conversate, just... At first, my brain didn't even question it. Well, why would it? It's your dad. I just assumed that he must have come home early. Maybe he got an Uber or something, maybe he didn't feel like staying over, so I said hi. And he didn't respond. No. He just stared at me. He wasn't confused and he didn't seem tired. Just a blank stare. For a few seconds, I really didn't think much of it. I figured he might be drunk or just out of it. And then he finally spoke. I have to mentally prepare. He looked right at me and asked, "Do you have Skittles?" Skittles. This just made me flash back to the Men in Black movie where the alien is like asking for sugar. What if this entire time what we think of as mimics are actually just aliens? Okay, what? I'm not gonna be able to sleep tonight now that I've just thought of that. I actually laughed. His question was absurd. We don't eat Skittles. We don't even buy candy like that. It was just such a random and out of place thing for him to say. So I said, no. Then he tilted his head slightly. I hate a head tilt. A head tilt is menacing. A head tilt is gross. Then he tilted his head slightly and said, "Do you want Skittles?" "I have Skittles." "What's your favorite color of Skittles?" Why is he trying to lure you in? The way he said it wasn't playful at all. It wasn't how my dad jokes around. It felt very forced, very off. Like he was trying to sound normal, but missing the mark. But still, I brushed it off. I told myself that he had to have just been messing with me, or that maybe he had had a few drinks and was just being weird. So I laughed it off, said goodnight, and went back upstairs. I remember thinking to myself that it was a very strange interaction between us, but it didn't feel scary. Not yet. If this thing follows you upstairs, we're gonna have a freaking problem. We are going to have a problem. I laid back down, I closed my eyes, and eventually I fell asleep again. But about an hour later, I was woken up. I rolled over and opened my eyes, to see he was standing in my doorway. Even if it is your dad, even if it is him and it's not a mimic or an alien, why is he being so creepy? Don't creepily stand in my doorway. This type of behavior would, to be completely honest, just piss me off. He was just standing there, unmoving, watching me. I remember the hallway light behind him so clearly because it made it so that I couldn't see his face. All I could see was the outline of him, tall, still, and silent, and my heart started beating faster. This time, I didn't let myself ignore that something definitely felt wrong. I sat up in bed and asked, "Are you okay? Do you feel sick?" And the second I spoke, he ran. What? Genuinely ran. He didn't walk away like a normal person. He turned and sprinted. So I sat there frozen, staring at the empty doorway, trying to finish waking up, trying to process what the hell had just happened. At this point, I was so freaked out that I didn't even want to get out of bed again. But something struck me. My cat. Your cat? Your cat is in the middle of all this? After I had seen my dad in the kitchen the first time, my cat was hissing. The sort of hiss like something was seriously wrong. So I had brought his food bowl into my room to try and calm him down. Really something I only do when he's really freaked out. When I woke up the next morning, the bowl was still there, which cemented to me that everything that had happened the night before hadn't been a dream. I hadn't imagined getting up. I hadn't sleepwalked. I was awake. All of what had happened, happened. The next morning, I heard the front door open, and my dad walked in. Oh my God! Normal and calm, completely unaware of anything that had happened the night before. I immediately asked him, "Where did you go last night?" And he looked at me confused and said, "I stayed at your cousin's." And that's when I knew. I asked him if he had come home at all, even for a minute, even briefly. He said no. So I told him everything. The kitchen, the question about the Skittles, him standing in my doorway, and he just stared at me and said, "That wasn't me." I took it so far as to call my cousin and double check, and he confirmed it. My dad had been there the entire night. Oh my God. In that moment, I remembered we have cameras outside of the house, so I checked them over and over again. Every angle, every timestamp, and not once, not for a single second, did my dad come home that night.
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me give you guys a story time of when my friend and I went to a party, a chillers, and one of them came back insane. So for story's sake, I'm going to call this girl Bloom, okay? So to give you guys context now, Bloom was dating this guy who was not from South Africa, and he was not from Nigeria either, guys. And one day this guy invited her to a thing that he was having with his friends, and she invited me and the other girl, and it was the three of us, alright? Cool. Now my thing is, when we got to this particular house, like when we're getting off the Uber, I felt like something is off, but then I was like, maybe I'm just nervous. Now we enter through the gate, whatever. When we get to the door, there is a security guard at the door, like, okay. So Bloom is like, "No guys, put your things in the box, like they're safe, nobody's gonna steal your phone, whatever." We put our bags inside the box, our bags which had our IDs and wallets. Okay, we walk through the passage. When we get there, guys, these people, number one, were doing hard substances. You know what I mean, the DRU, yeah. They were doing hard substances. Some of these substances, I have never in my life seen them before or heard of them. Nah. The only one that I know was the one which the people in the movies do like this with the card. Yeah, that one. And so we get there, we sit down. And also, guys, another thing. Before we got here, Bloom was like, "You guys are not to take anything. Don't smoke the habli that these people are smoking. Don't drink anything that anybody offers you, even if it's in the closed bottle." Now you know Bloom knew, guys. We get there, me and my friend are sitting together, and obviously Bloom is there cuddled up with her boyfriend. Bloom brings us a bottle and we're drinking. It's not even vibes for me, but anyways, as time goes on, more and more people start showing up. It's girls, it's guys. At some point, my dear, they switch off the lights, and then like a disco comes on. It's going like this, but in the midst of this entire setup, You can see the things that are happening. These people are doing things naked. I'm not going to say what they were doing. Put 1 + 1 together. Some of them are taking all these substances, putting them on their body. Like, people are naked. It was like a diddy party, guys. And me and my friend were so scared. Like, we're also like holding on to each other because like we're like, what is going on? So like, and another thing is like, these men are trying to pull my friend. They are trying to pull me, and I'm just like, no, like I don't want to get pulled by these guys. Eventually we tell my friend like, nah, like we've had enough now, we want to leave, you know. She's like, no, her boyfriend, guys, number one, was like, did they do anything? And I didn't know what he meant by that. So we're like, no, we didn't do anything, we just want to leave. And my friend is like, no man, let me just go talk to him. And I'm thinking, what do you mean, did we do anything? Now I know when he said, did they do anything, he meant, did we dala with any of the guys there? Hi, my friend comes back after like a couple of minutes or whatever. She comes back to us. And then she's like, yeah guys, we can leave, like we're all leaving. Hi, okay. We get to the door, we take our phones, we take our bags, and then we leave. In the car, guys, in the Uber, we were not saying anything to each other because I felt like my friend sold us out. Shame. I felt like she sold us and she did not say anything to us. Hi, okay, cool. We get home. I get home. My friend gets home. My Bloom also gets home. Whatever. It's chilled vibes. How? Okay, the following day, like I feel like I felt the need to confront her about what had happened. Hi, but we get there with my other friend or whatever, and we're talking to Bloom before we even get to that. Bloom is like, listen, my boyfriend called. She called him by name. She's like, my boyfriend called. She tells me that one of you guys stole something from him. And because it wasn't me, guys, I was like, hey, I don't know what you guys, I don't know what you're talking about because I didn't take anything from that house. My other friend is also like, you know, oh, it's not me. And I'm like, what was it? What was taken? He's like, I don't know, but he says a very expensive bracelet was taken from his room. Which one of you took the bracelet? Now, guys, to me, it was very clear that it was my other friend because obviously I did not take it. And obviously her denying and me saying it was her, it seems like, you know, I'm just pointing fingers. It's basically hearsay. So now Bloom is like, guys, think about it. Please just bring back whatever you stole. I will take it back and not say who it was between the two of y'all. She's like, this guy's dad is a witch doctor and this guy has spirits that are working with him. And she was like, guys, think about it. Out of all the people that were at that like particular party, why would he point fingers at like specifically us if he did not know? So he was like, if you know yourself, just bring it back. He's not gonna do anything. He just wants it back. And I was just like, you know what, because I know it's not me, like he can do whatever he wants. And the girl said the same thing. So we did not have a chance to talk to her about it because she was mad that one of us would like do something like that, and we're also mad at her because why would she do us dirty like that? I go back home, guys, and when I tell you, within the next 10 business days, baby girl started going insane. Y'all, we would be sitting with her, and I thought she was on like crystal meth. We would be sitting with her and she would be like, do you guys hear that? Like somebody's calling my name. And sometimes she'd hear a snake hissing and I'd be like, baby girl, like, are you okay? Like, what's going on? And at some point it got to a point where there was this grandma that stayed front opposite her house, and that grandmother died a very long time before we were even born, y'all. And that grandma, apparently she used to sell acha, and apparently baby girl would tell us, not apparently, she would tell us that, you know, grandma's at night, grandma X, Y, and Z gives us acha to eat with bread. Like if you're hungry at 3 a.m, you should just walk out of your house and go to grandma X, Y, and Z and she will give you acha. And I'm like, what? And I remember asking my mom about this grandma. She was like, yeah, she used to sell acha, but like back in the days when we were still growing up, but like she died. Why are you asking about her? And I was like, oh no, I heard people talking about her. Sometimes like I would be visiting her house and she would be gathering rocks and putting them inside a plastic, and I would ask her like, what are you putting those rocks for? She'd be like, oh, they're going to work for us later, and I'm like, later where, how, you know what I mean? And then eventually I stopped like kind of interacting with her, y'all. And this happened over a period of a couple of months. Obviously one time she got so bad, her family took her to the hospital, and the doctors told the family that she seems to be showing signs of schizophrenia, and the family obviously took it to a further level. And because she wasn't born with schizophrenia, they took it to a next level and went to a traditional healer, and the traditional healer told them whatever he had told them, and also told them that the people who know the truth as to what happened are these two people, me and Bloom. Bloom now is acting all oblivious, like she doesn't know. And obviously it kind of switched in my head when the traditional healer was like, we know the truth, because he said some other things, and I was like, oh, it's that party. And baby girl was baby girl was the one that stole that bracelet. Bloom, guys, refused to say anything to baby girl's parents. They came to my house, and the mom knows my mom. And guys, I told the truth because I did not want it to be like we're not saying anything and it looks like we were both in it. Mind you, she was in it alone, and it's not necessarily Bloom's fault that this happened, but at the same time it's like, why did you put us in such a predicament? You know what I mean? I told them everything from the time we left to the time we got there to the time that Bloom's boyfriend accused us of stealing the bracelet, and I said she took the bracelet. And apparently Bloom's boyfriend's dad is a traditional healer. And eventually, I don't know what happened to Bloom, y'all, but I know that Bloom was taken to her grandma's place in the not Bloom, sorry, the baby girl that went insane. She was taken to the villages to her grandma, and she's still insane. She's still mentally ill, y'all. She's still not okay. Because I had asked her sister the other day, like, where is so-and-so? She was like, ever since Vele, she started whatever she started here, she has never been the same. Until this day, baby girl's family does not speak to Bloom and her family because they blame Bloom for what happened to their child. And guys, I want you guys' thoughts on this. I don't blame Bloom, but I feel like she is partly to blame. But at the same time, it's like, why did she steal? Like, why are you going to people's places and stealing things? And on top of that, she denied it. And even though Bloom warned her and said, hey, you know, I don't know, y'all. What do you guys think? I don't really blame Bloom. Like, I feel like she's partly to blame. But the entire blame can't be put on her because she did steal, you know?